I'm going to talk about my childhood in the war. It was in Mobley mostly, and then Knutsford.
Again, if we can.
Were you were born in Mobley?
Yes. And moved to Knutsford later, yes.
And you were perhaps around 13 years old then when you moved to Knutsford?
Oh no, I'd be older than that. I'm trying to think. Be older than 13, I think. Yes, because I went to school in Knutsford eventually, but I was still going from Mobley. So I don't remember when I moved from Mobley to Knutsford.
You started off school in Mobley though,
Yes, did you? Yes. And then about 11 or 12 I think I went to Knutsford school, because we didn't have a lot of lessons at Mobley school. It was a little old school, and we weren't getting all the lessons that they were in Knutsford school. So I was sent to Knutsford.
Can you tell me about your family in Mobley when you were quite young?
Yeah, my parents, and I just had one brother, Roy, and parents. Trying to think where my dad... Mum's family had come from Alderley, I think, Alderley Edge and Wilmslow Way. And Dad's family were, I think they were from Mobley, or from Manchester originally. I had relatives there.
Your parents were Edwin Lord Dean?
Yes.
And Amy Dean?
Yes. She was Amy Davis.
So you moved to Edgerton School in Knutsford when you were about 11?
Yes.
How did you get there?
I had to go up to, cycle up to my auntie's shop at Mobley and leave my bike there, because there was a bus that came with people to the Ilford, came from Knutsford to Ilford, and I could get on that bus at Mobley, up by Ilford, and go back to Knutsford. But I couldn't get the bus from my house, like. So I cycled up to my auntie's, left my bike there, and got on the bus at Ilford.
Tell me some of the things you got up to at school.
Oh gosh, I don't remember that. We only went for half a day because we had Manchester schools, I think it was, coming in for half a day. So half a day, in fine weather, we would be going out for a school walk, and in really bad weather we'd be sent home. So for a long time we only went half a day, because we were sharing the school with Manchester children who were billets in Knutsford.
Do you remember air raid warnings and sounds like that during the war?
Do I remember what it sounded like?
Air raid warnings and sounds for bombing.
Yes. We used to get quite a lot in Mobley because as the crow flies, you're not far from the airport, and you're always after the airport, I suppose.
Were there many planes flying over at the time? Do you remember any planes flying over?
Oh, we got a lot of planes. I don't think we ever got any German ones. I don't remember any. perhaps wouldn't be able to get that near to the airport. But you had a lot taking off and that from the airport. Fighters going up sort of, and they were going down south to attack whatever was coming in, I suppose.
Was it a little bit scary?
I don't remember being scared really. It's when you're young, it's all sort of, you take it in your stride, don't you? Watch what's going on.
When you were not at school, were you playing any games or listening to music or anything like that?
No, sometimes if you weren't in school, you were organised like a school walk or something. In good weather, school would probably be organising something, a walk or doing something, when they only had the classroom for half a day.
And what about music?
I wasn't very musical. My brother was. He went for music lessons. We had a piano and we had a violin in the house that had belonged to previous relations. It was decided my brother would learn the piano, which I badly wanted to learn. I had to learn the violin, and I hated the violin. Never got to grips with that. But and of course I didn't get to learn the piano. I was always tinkling on it myself, but not playing it properly.
Tell me about the sort of food you were eating at that stage during the war.
Well, you got usual rations of meat and things, but my dad had an allotment as well as the garden, and he grew a lot of things in his garden. We had a lot of variations with vegetables, really. He was always trying new things, and so plenty of veg, but meat was rationed. But we did keep hens, so you had the odd hen, chicken occasionally. We didn't go short on meat.
Fresh eggs every morning?
Yes.
Did you do any cooking yourself?
I did when I got older, but when I left school, I wanted to do cookery. I don't think I was very good at it.
Tell me what you remember about the war actually breaking out in 1939. What your family were doing, or whether you had any shelters or anything like that?
Yes, we did have shelters, but we had to go across the road, and there was a wood. Like I had an aunt and uncle across the road, and behind their house there was a wood, and they built the air raid shelter in there. So if you knew it was near, we used to run across and go to the shelter in the wood across the way. So
then you decided to help by joining one of the services then?
Yeah, the ATS.
Tell me about that.
Oh, well, I enjoyed that, and I've been in the ATS, but I didn't go abroad or anything, just stayed in England. I would have liked to have gone abroad, but never got sent.
So what were you doing then during that time?
In the ATS? Well, various things really. I was a driver mostly. Mostly driving ambulances. Occasionally you had to drive an officer, and I used to hate that. And I never forgot the first time I had to drive an officer in a little staff car, and we pulled up where he wanted to and sat there and I sat there, and after a bit I said, "Isn't this where you wanted to go? Are we too early?" He said, "I'm waiting for you to open my door." Wouldn't have thought of doing that. I'd been driving, big ambulances.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the ambulance drive that you did?
Well, we did various jobs really. Sometimes it would be an accident you'd be sent to. Sometimes just taking people to hospital or bringing them back from hospital and things like that. I used to, when I was in the Midlands, I had to come to Knutsford a lot, and especially with German prisoners, because Knutsford had the hospital for German prisoners of war, so I used to get home a lot.
So where were you? But were you based in Knutsford or Mobley?
No, I was mostly based in the Midlands, round about Birmingham and Stafford. And
how old were you?
I had a short spell down in London, but not very long down there.
Were you about 17, 18 then, were you?
Yes, I would be, I suppose.
And who taught you to drive?
Well, I could drive before I joined the army, because when I was working, I was working at Watson's, a shop in Knutsford, and they were short of drivers. And as soon as I was 17, they taught me to drive the bread van round. So I was driving from, being 17, because everybody was being, men were being called up.
So you went from delivering bread to ambulance driving?
Yes, did all sorts.
Is there anything else you can think of that happened in Knutsford during the war that you can tell me about?
I don't remember anything special. I did a lot of troop training in Town Park and that. A lot of a lot of training for planes came over and dropped parachutes in Town Park. Training the parachutists, I suppose, came over from Manchester Ringway and dropped them over to Town Park. So they'd be training them, I suppose.
And there were quite a few American soldiers in the area. Did you ever see them?
I think we had American soldiers, yes, I vaguely remember them. Don't remember a lot of them. However, you forget a lot of what happened.
Can you remember what you did for sort of fun time, free time? Did you do any dancing or?
No, not really. Only every May Day we were practising for that. I think they still did the May Day. We had to practice quite a few months, I suppose, for that. Have you talked to any other Mobley people? There's people older than me that probably remember a lot more than I do.
Mum, there was a funny story you told us in the kitchen about when you were driving the ambulance.
What was that?
And you were telling us about when they got out and ran away from you. Can you tell that story about you taking the Germans back from Knutsford Hospital?
Oh, yes.
Can you tell that story?
Picking German prisoners.
Yes. Oh, yes.
So can you say I picked some German soldiers up and then tell that story? Can you tell that story now? Because the boys haven't heard it. The boys haven't heard it.
We picked them up in Knutsford to take them back to the Midlands, and halfway there we stopped. We thought we'd give them a drink, because it's a long journey and that. But when I stopped, they all dashed out of the van and across the fields. I thought they were escaping, but apparently they'd kept them because I had been allowed to go home overnight. They hadn't told them at the hospital, so the Germans had been kept in a room all night, like just standing, I suppose. And they were dying to go to the toilet. So as soon as I stopped, they all dashed across the fields. There was a little copse of trees. And I thought, oh heck, I'm in trouble now. But I wasn't. They came back.
You thought they'd escaped?
Yeah. I didn't know what to do. I said to the man with the gun, like, fire your gun over the heads. He said, it won't make a noise, I haven't got any bullets in it. So we couldn't do anything. But they came back one by one.
Where did you take them then? They had to go. Can you remember where you took them?
I think it was somewhere outside Leamington Spa. There was a German prisoner of war camp. But there was a hospital in Knutsford, so if they'd had to go to the hospital, they came to Knutsford.
So they were quite young, were they?
Yes, young German soldiers, I suppose.
Were they well behaved?
Yes, yeah. Yes, they weren't trying to escape.
Can you remember where you were first stationed and the stories you told me about being stationed at Warrington? Can you remember that?
About what?
Being stationed at Warrington when you first signed up.
Yes.
Can you say something about that? Can you remember going to Warrington?
Yes, I can remember joining up. But don't remember what I told you.
You talked about when you had to come home for leave, how you got home, when you had to come home.
Walked all the way home, yeah.
Can you tell that story? Can you start that story again and tell that story to the boys, because they don't know that story? Can you tell them that you went to Warrington and that you had to walk home?
Oh yeah,
Can you tell
it was where we enlisted, and then we'd got this leave over the weekend, I think, and no way of getting home, and I walked all the way from Warrington to Mobley, really.
That's quite a long way.
Yeah. But my dad gave me the money to get back. And you do daft things when you're young, don't you?
So Pam, do you know when you signed up with your service? Do you remember when you signed up with your service? What was the process of signing up to join the forces?
What was the first what?
What was the process with joining?
I think I had to go to Warrington. There was somewhere where you signed on, and I think that's where we first went as well when we were called up. Yeah.
And where did you go to, and what did you have to do to enlist?
We just went and sort of put your name down and gave them all the details and everything, and then they sent for you and told you where to report.
So what was that like when you were told that you were going to be, you did get into it?
Yes.
What was that like?
Oh yes, I was highly delighted. I was waiting to go, doing my bit for the country. Yeah.
And what was, did you get to choose what you were going to do, or did they give you options?
You can choose which you enlisted in, like the Army or the Wrens or the WAFs.
And what did you choose to do?
The Army.
And within the Army, what did you do?
Well, mostly driving, ambulance driver. sometimes staff cars. I didn't like driving officers and staff cars. But I like driving the ambulances.
And how did you get your medal?
Well, I think it's just for being there, like not done anything brave.
I'm with you. That's no problem. So, obviously, growing up during the wartime, what was that like for you?
Well, I suppose it was different to ordinarily because you know, we were listening for air raid warnings and things, and we did get quite a lot because as the crow flies, we're quite near, in Mobley, you're quite near to Ringway Airport. But it was called Ringway then, it's Manchester Airport now, and it's much bigger.
And can you tell me the type of sounds you heard when the air raids were going off? You can almost paint that picture for what it was like hearing planes or the air raids go off.
How do you mean, mate?
So can you describe what it was like when the
you listen for the sound of the planes then, because the German planes made, you knew whether it was an English plane or a German plane. The engine sounded different, so you knew what was flying over. But so you'd go, if it was German planes, you'd go in the air raid shelter.
And you said you ran across the road, obviously to your was it your aunt, was it?
Sorry?
You said you went to a shelter across the road.
Yes, well, I lived in a house that was in a row, and then across the road there were 3 cottages with my aunt and uncle in, and they had the air raid shelter in the wood behind them, so just had to run across to their house.
And do you remember the emotions that you and your family had at that time?
Well, I think as kids I'd only be young then, wouldn't I? You were just excited, you weren't frightened or anything. Just exciting, different.
So what made you want to join the war?
Well, I don't know really, I just thought you know, you want to help. So, my dad had been in the army in the First World War, and he used to talk about the army, and so I wanted to do the same.
And what did your father do?
In the army, do you mean, or after?
In the army, yeah.
Oh, I'm not sure, but he wore a kilt. He was in a Scottish regiment.
And he served during the First World War, did he?
Yeah.
Were you quite proud of your dad?
Oh, yes. He was most upset. He kept his kilts, and he'd not noticed, but he'd come home one day, and my mother had made a rug, you know, one of those peg rugs, cut it all up out of his kilt. Oh, and when he realised what it was, I've never seen anybody so upset. He shut himself away for ages. It was an awful thing to do, really, because he was proud of his kilt. And there it was on the rug in bits.
Did he ever talk to you about his service?
Only odd bits, really. I suppose that's what inspired me to want to do the same.
Amazing. So, do you remember when you signed up, do you know how old you would have been?
When I joined up, oh, well, I would have had to have been 17 and a half, wouldn't I? So it'd be about 18, I suppose.
And what were those? You said before you were quite excited at the idea of joining up.
Oh yes. Yes, I loved being in the army.
And why was that? And why was that?
I don't know why. Just different from ordinary humdrum home life, I suppose.
Just different environments and different people.
Yeah.
So what was that home life like?
Home life.
Yeah, what was that like?
Well, there was only myself and a brother, and it's a quiet life in the country, really.
And what's the age difference between you and your brother?
2 years. I was the oldest.
It's okay.
I had a younger brother who was younger than me.
Brilliant.
I'm sorry, mate.
No, you were okay. Did you know if your younger brother, did he serve in the war as well?
Is he still?
Did he serve in the war as well, your younger brother?
No, I don't think he did, no. No.
Do you remember growing up with him?
Oh yes, yes.
What was that like?
Well, we've just had an ordinary life. We got on all right.
Amazing. You know, when you were growing up, obviously there's something that other people have talked to us about called May Day. Are you aware what May Day is?
Oh, I've heard of it, yes. That was something to do with the war, wasn't it? Yes. Don't remember exactly what it was now.
Do you have any recollection?
Are you thinking the celebration?
Convention May Day.
Yeah.
Knutsford May Day.
That's it,
Do you
yeah.
remember-
That was closed during the war, stopped during the war.
Yeah, they're talking about the Knutsford May Day, but Mobberley had its own little Rose Queen festival as well.
Oh, I
didn't it?
thought you meant it.
No, but no,
There's
that's
a
all right.
war.
No, because we were talking about the
Well,
war.
we've
so
already
that's-
mentioned it, haven't we?
But can you remember earlier when you were talking about practicing dancing? You told
Yes.
us about practicing dancing for the May Day.
Yes.
Can you tell a little story about that? Can you say anything about the May Day and practicing dancing? Can you think of anything to say about that?
Not really. We used to have to go to Victory Hall and practice all the dances that we're going to do on the May Day.
That's all good. One thing I've just thought of that I wanted to go into a little bit, if that's okay, Pam. Do you remember the moment when war was announced?
Do I remember? Yes, I remember hearing it over the radio.
So what was that like? What did you hear, and where was that announcement from?
I don't remember who made the announcement. Was it the Prime Minister, I think? But I don't think it made such... It didn't really mean as much to you. You didn't know what it was going to mean, did you really, at that age?
Sure. And you're saying it wasn't did you feel like it wasn't a big thing at that point?
No, not to me. I mean, it would be to grown-ups, wouldn't it? But no.
And you obviously mentioned that your father served. Did anybody else in your family, or maybe even your uncle, did they serve within the war?
My dad was in the First World War, yes, and his brother was. They were the only two, I think, that I know of.
And did they serve in the Second World War?
No, they'd be too old, I suppose, wouldn't they?
Got you. So
My dad wore a kilt in the First World War.
he was in a Scottish regiment, wasn't he?
Yeah. And my mother made a rug out of it, and I think it broke his heart.
Do you remember how life changed between non-war time and when it was within the war?
No, there was still a certain amount of rationing and things were short, but it didn't get back to normal straight away. And then things started coming, you know, from abroad, and that food and stuff that came from abroad.
Do you remember the announcement of the end of the war?
Do I remember the last word?
Do you remember when they announced that the war was over?
Oh yes, I remember it being announced, yes. But it's sort of, you took it for granted because you knew it was going to happen, kind of thing. It didn't make a big impression because you knew it was going to happen.
And what was that like for you?
Well, it didn't make a lot of difference really. I was still in the forces. But I liked being in the forces. I was very tempted to join up again, you know, to rejoin, but I thought I'd better not.
And why was that?
Well, that was because the boyfriend I had, who I did eventually marry, wasn't going to join up again, and I thought, well, if I still want to stay with him, I've got to get him up.
When you were talking about your service, you said the ATS. I know what it obviously stands for, but I just want to get that on tape if that's okay. Are you right to tell me what ATS stands for?
Oh, I think it's Auxiliary Territorial Service or something like that, isn't it? Is that right?
Yeah, I think, is that right? I believe that's right.
No, I'll Google it in a minute, so I'm just Googling the history of the town. Yeah.
Just
a description.
Yeah, could you just give me a description of what the ATS is?
Well, it was just like the army for the men, only it was for girls.
Got you.
What was that like joining up as a woman during the Second World War?
Well, it was, I suppose by the time I joined up, the war was almost over anyway, so. But the ATS had done a lot in the war. There have been, and some of them, like there were a lot in France when I was hoping to go to France, but I never got sent there. There were a lot over there still.
Mum, do you remember when we were talking about the sounds you could hear because you live near to Manchester Airport?
Yes.
What can you tell me the story about the balloons going up? Do you remember the balloons going up at the airport?
Oh, you could hear that. Yes.
Can you just start that story by saying that I used to hear the balloons going up? Can you say that yourself?
I don't remember what I said now about them.
If you just say, let's have a good way to do it. Before we heard the air raid sirens.
Oh yes, the balloons would go up.
Yeah, so can you say,
yes.
Can you start and
made
say
like a
again?
whooshing sound when they put them up. They'd get the news, well, probably the same time as the sirens, but they went up straight away.
And what went up, sorry?
The balloons, you know, because they were all around the airport. They made a whooshing noise.
And do you know what those were for?
The balloons, well, it'd be so the planes couldn't get low enough to do as much damage as they'd like to, wouldn't it? Because they'd go so far up and the planes couldn't get below them, could they, because of all the long lines and that.
Got you. So, obviously, some bombs did hit in and around Knutsford and primarily Manchester and Liverpool. Do you remember any memories of if any bombs hit nearby, and what memories you have of that?
Oh, I remembered bombs dropping at Ollerton, and we went on our bikes to have a look at that damage. Ollerton's not far from Mobley as you go, as the crow flies, like. Those were the nearest bombs, I think, to Mobley. But we're not, as the crow flies, you're not far from the airport going across the fields from Mobley, so you're always expecting things, but there were balloons all round and they went up as soon as the sirens went off. So they couldn't get as near as they would like to.
And you were talking about going on your bike to go see the damage with your friends. What was that like?
Well, it wasn't nice to see the damage, but we used to go and see what had been done. They usually were nowhere near the targets we wanted, so most of the bombs were dropped in empty fields or things that didn't matter, kind of thing. Don't think they ever got to do any damage. Not that I remember anyway.
What did you see when you got to these places?
When what?
What did you see when you and your friends biked out to these places?
What did we see?
Yeah, what did you see? Describe what you saw when you got there.
Oh, yeah. Well, just whatever damage was done. Sometimes there was a lot of damage and sometimes, not much. But there wouldn't be much to see. Only a deep hole and a pile of dirt, sort of thing.
Do you remember the fires that were, some people have talked about being able to see a glow from Manchester and Liverpool during these times where bombs did hit more built up areas? Yes.
Oh, they did a lot of damage then, yes. They didn't do much round Mobley and Knutsford area really, because there's not much there to damage, so it would be a waste of their bombs, I suppose, if they weren't going to do a lot of damage, wouldn't it?
Did you see any fires or in the distance?
I don't remember any, no, not that I can think of.
It's okay. And obviously Mobley is where you grew up a lot of the time, isn't it? Can you tell me about whereabouts that is and what it was like?
Mobley? Well, it's a big village. It goes over a large area, but not greatly populated. It's a lot bigger now. A lot of people from Manchester really have come out to Mobley and built houses and things. It's more built up now. It wasn't when I was a child.
And what about Knutsford?
Knutsford. I never knew much about Knutsford till I went to school there, but that's all I did was go to school on the bus. And if Mum shopped, like she shopped in Altrincham or Wilmslow, we rarely went to Knutsford, although it was the nearest place, but we didn't go there very often when I was young, until I went to school there. And then I only saw the school and nothing else, kind of thing.
Did you work in Knutsford before the war?
I worked, when I first started work, yes, I worked in Knutsford. I wanted to to learn, like baking and icing cakes and things like that. So I went to work in a shop like that. I've forgotten the name of the shop now. Bowen's, wasn't it?
Watson's.
Watson's,
The
wasn't
shop
it?
was called Watson's. Do you
Ah.
want to say that? Can you say the shop was called Watson's?
Oh, the shop was called Watson's.
And do you know if Watson's is still there today?
Oh, I don't.
No, it's gone.
No.
No, I don't think so.
That's okay. What was it like to work there? Did you enjoy it?
Oh, I think so, yes. Yes.
What did you
More
get?
so probably because I got out on the vans sometimes.
Is that where you learnt to drive?
Yes.
Okay. Did any of your families or friends ever talk about the aftermath of war or any stories from the wartime?
I can't think of any. No.
What was war something that people talked about a lot, or was it just like the elephant in the room?
We probably talked about it then, but nobody does now, do they? I've never heard anybody mention it.
Mum, did you and Dad talk about the war? Because Dad was in the RAF, wasn't he?
Yes.
So did you and Dad ever talk about the war together?
Well, we probably did then, yes, about things that were happening at the time. I don't remember what now, but we would have done them. We used to argue which was the best, the Army or the Air Force.
And obviously, I know the answer to this, but what was the better of the two?
Oh, obviously the Army. Couldn't go anywhere without the Army. I don't think your dad learned to fly, did he? I don't
Well,
remember.
he nearly did, didn't
He
he?
did.
He did, but he didn't pass his exams. Can you say? Can you repeat? My husband Tom was in the RAF.
My husband Tom was in the RAF.
And how long did he serve? Do you know how long your husband served in the RAF?
Oh, about the same time as me, I think so.
And
About
if-
3 years.
Can you say, my husband served in the RAF for 3 years?
My husband served in the RAF for 3 years.
And did he ever talk about his experiences?
I suppose he must have done. I don't remember any particular ones. I suppose he must have done. We'd both be trying to outdo each other in tears, I expect.
Do you know if he enjoyed what he did during the war?
I think he did, yes. Yes, I think he would have quite liked to have stayed with flying, but decided against it in the end.
And why was that?
I'm not sure whether it was you had to sign up for a long time. I can't remember now why he didn't. He was seriously thinking about it.
Did he ever get an opportunity to go abroad during the war?
I don't think he did. As far as I know, do you know?
Did he go to America? During
America.
the war? Did he go over to America for something in the war? As part of his training, maybe?
To where?
America.
Oh, he could have done, yes.
Did he do his? Was that for his training? Do you think? Do you think he went to America to do some training?
Do you know, I don't remember
No, I'm
now.
not 100% sure.
Yes, I do remember him going. Tom went to America to do some training.
Only a few more questions for you, and then we're all set. I just wanted to know, did you know about the war before it impacted Britain? Did you ever have any hearings of what was going on in Europe?
I think we did, yes. I think we knew it was inevitable, knew it was coming. Yeah.
And what was that news like to hear that?
I can't remember how old I'd be now by then. About 15 or 16. I wouldn't be all that bothered about it, would I?
Did you know any specifics about the war?
I'm sure I must have done at the time, but I can't remember now anything specially. You think that it's going to be a lot worse than it was worse than it was for us, sort of thing. I suppose in London and places like that it was a lot worse.
Do you have memories of sitting around the radio and listening to what was being said about the war?
We did used to always listen to the 6 o'clock news to find out what was going on.
And what would you hear on the radio at 6 o'clock?
Well, you'd hear the news as it was. It was the up-to-date news, the 6 o'clock news. You'd hear exactly what was going on everywhere.
Do you know what type of things they might say about the war on the news?
Well, I suppose nobody wanted it, sort of thing, that everybody grumbled about it, but there's not much they could do about it.
What sort of things would the newsreaders say about the war? On the news, on the radio?
They just tell you the news as it was. Sometimes they couldn't tell some news if they didn't want it known, but normally it'd be the news as it was, unless it was secret.
Cool. Is there anything else you wanted to cover?
I think she's done very well.
I know, she really
She's
has.
been hard, hasn't
I know. No, she's
brilliant.
Trusting me. You've remembered a lot, Mum.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Celebrations after the war, I'd have liked to have heard a little bit more.
Yeah.
Did you want to go for
If there were any, I don't know whether we touched on it before, but I don't know whether because you were a teenager as the war ended, weren't you?
I would be, wouldn't I? Yes.
And a party girl, were you?
I don't think there were many parties going on.
Well, even after the
There
war.
was still a lot of rationing.
Yeah, but there were celebrations.
Oh
perhaps
yes,
when
there'd
the
be
war ended.
celebrations, yes.
Can you remember any in Knutsford or in Moberley or?
No, I don't remember anything particular.
What did when you heard the news on the radio that the war had ended? What did you do and what did you and your friends do?
I honestly don't. I would be in the army then. I don't even remember where I was when it ended. You knew it was coming and it was going to end. But I can't remember.
Didn't have a glass of wine then?
No, I doubt it if I was in the army.
No, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. It's great.